Hey everyone, Kyle here. If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Let me explain a little bit. Anchor has tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and so much more. It's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. So download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's anchor.fm. They'll have everything you need all in one place. I can speak from my experience. It's been awesome so far and super easy. So go check it out, guys, and we'll see you later. What's up, everyone? This is Our Travel Experiences. I'm your host, Kyle Rasmussen, and welcome to episode 30. Pretty exciting to be at 30 episodes now. This is still going strong, still having fun, and excited to share another one of my experiences. So I know we're in the middle of summertime here. You guys are probably out exploring the country, exploring, wherever you're at, maybe taking some road trips. And so I thought, what better time to share one of my experiences where I took a big road trip that ended up being about 16 days and crossed a lot of the western U.S. So I thought, hey, why don't I share it now and maybe give you some inspiration for a summer road trip this year. So I'll start this off. I did this road trip in 2017, I believe. I was headed back to San Diego for my final year of college, and I needed to drive back down to San Diego from Washington State. And so I decided, why don't I, make a big road trip out of this? I had already driven up and down California and Oregon multiple times, going back and forth over the years of college and whatnot. And so I wanted to do something different. I wanted to see more of this great country. And so I decided to go way out of the way on my way back. So it kind of started out, I knew that my family was going to go to Colorado, to Boulder, to see some of my other family. One of my cousins just had his first kid, and we were going to go see the kid and see the family because we hadn't seen them in a while. And so I knew I was going to go to Colorado at some point right before school started. So that was kind of built into the itinerary there. And then I just kind of started building this road trip around it. So I knew I had to be back in San Diego like a day or two before classes started. I think it was 2 days before, whatever it was. So I knew I had that endpoint in mind. I knew I had to be in Colorado at a certain time. And so I just started building this. Said, okay, where can I go that I haven't been? Now, I've explored a lot of the western U.S. Like I said, I'd gone through California multiple times, Oregon, Idaho. I've seen a lot of the western U.S. So I was pushing further east a little bit. So as I was planning this out, I was looking at, what sites I wanted to see, things I wanted to do, et cetera, et cetera. And this thing just kind of got bigger and bigger and bigger and expanded into what ended up being one of my favorite trips ever. Definitely my favorite trip in the U.S. Still to this day. And anyways, so it expanded to 16 days. I think it was 11 states, 7 national parks. I think I put about 4,000 miles on my car. It was a good time. So I started out the trip. I left in the evening one day from Yakima, Washington, and I left I want to say it was like 5 o'clock or something like that. So the first day I drove through a part of eastern Washington that I hadn't driven through before, I believe. At that time, I drove through kind of southeastern Washington over the Palouse, and I drove to Clarkston, which is right on the Idaho border, towards the bottom of Washington State. And then I drove to Lewiston, which is right on the Idaho side of the border. And then I drove that way through Idaho, and yeah, drove through a lot of northern Idaho there, and got to see some pretty sights there. There's a lot of beautiful areas there, and then probably like 6 or 7 hours, 5 or 6 hours, 7 hours into the drive. It got dark, so I didn't really get to see much, but I was just going through the Nez Perce National Forest. A lot of windy roads following a river, and ultimately drove up into Montana. Across there's a big or a summit there where you cross into Montana, and I think I might be remembering incorrectly, but I'm pretty sure I saw an elk, a big elk up there in the middle of the night. And then I ultimately made it into Missoula that night, and checked into my hotel and just went to sleep. That was pretty much it for the night. I got there at like 10 p.m. or something like that. So nothing too exciting, but got to see some beautiful sights there. And then the next day, I spent the morning kind of exploring Missoula a little bit. I went to the University of Montana and parked there. And then there's a little hike right at the edge of campus. It's called the M. So there's a big M sign up on the hill above the campus. So I did that little hike up there and kind of looked over the town of Missoula, checked that out, and just took some pictures there and everything, and then hiked back down. And then I drove on to, so I drove east, and then I drove north up to, I guess it's not really north, but I drove east to Helena, Montana, which is where the Capitol is. And I stopped there and went to the Capitol building there, and explored a little bit. I think there was a museum nearby that I went to as well. Looking at the pictures there, there's a beautiful cathedral there that I went to as well. So that was pretty nice. And then I just grabbed a quick lunch there, which, by the way, when I knew I was going to do this road trip and just kind of planning ahead for, future trips, I bought a little cooler, and then I bought some peanut butter and jelly. And so I had a lot of peanut butter and jelly sandwiches on this trip as I was driving down the road. But it was a lot of fun. And anyways, from Helena, I drove north up to Great Falls, and went to the Great Falls, where Lewis and Clark kind of stood as well. And let's see, I'm looking at the pictures here. Yeah, I went to the Great Falls there. I think that's pretty much about all I did. It was a pretty quick stop in Great Falls, but just wanted to see it, wanted to go out of the way a little bit, And then I drove through Montana, through a lot of Montana that day, and then eventually made it down to Billings that night. Billings is where I stayed the night. And my family, so my parents and sister, were driving to Boulder to see my family in Colorado. And so we met up that night in Billings and all stayed the night there. And that night when I was coming into town, I stopped at, there's some bluffs that kind of overlooked Billings. And so I went and watched the sunset there, which was nice. And then, let's see, from there, I think I went back in the morning the next day and went back to the bus with my family, and we looked out there. We went hiking a little bit in that area and just kind of checked things out. And I don't think we went and saw anything else that day. Nothing too exciting. But anyways, my family drove south, or made their way down to Wyoming, and eventually Colorado. And I turned east and drove across the rest of Montana, seeing the beautiful desolate scenery of eastern Montana. and eventually made it into North Dakota. And one of the crazy things that happened is like I think it was right before I got to the North Dakota border from Montana. There was a crazy hailstorm that happened. There's a lot of crazy weather on this trip, to be honest. So yeah, I was right around the North Dakota border. I don't think I was in North Dakota yet, but right on the border there. And all of a sudden, this hailstorm comes up, and it was pretty sizable hail, which can happen in Montana and in the Midwest there. And it was so bad that that all the cars that were driving had to pull over because you just couldn't. It was coming too fast, and so the windshield wipers couldn't keep up, and it was just too much and too hard on the windshield. And so all the cars pulled over, and so I got to sit on the side of the road in the hailstorm for it was probably 20 minutes or so until it passed. But once it cleared up, it was beautiful, and I eventually made it into North Dakota. And once I made it in there, I drove a little ways, not too far into North Dakota from the western side, is Theodore Roosevelt National Park. So that was the first one that I visited. And anyways, I went to Teddy Roosevelt National Park there, which is beautiful. I think that's one that is a little underrated. No one really talks about that one too much, but it's a really beautiful national park. Definitely recommend checking it out if you're ever in the area. It was awesome. I think it was really pretty, after the rain and everything, the hailstorm. It rained on and off while I was there that afternoon. One of the fun things there, though, is there's bison that are in the park. And just happened to be when I was driving through one part of the park, there's a herd of bison that were crossing the road and kind of along the side of the road. And so we actually had to wait for them to cross. And I got to sit there and like 10, 15 feet away and watch them kind of do their thing. So that was pretty cool. That was a fun moment that was really unexpected. But yeah, I went through the park, didn't do much hiking. It was really muddy and everything after all the rain. But got to see some beautiful sights and beautiful rainbows with all the rain going on. So it was nice. It was a really cool place, and I think a place that is definitely very underrated. Okay, so then, I kept driving along, and not too far past Teddy Roosevelt National Park, as you're heading east, if you turn off on one of the highways that runs north and south, I can't remember which one it is. If you Google it, you'll be able to find this. But there's a stretch of highway called the Enchanted Highway. And if you go on that road, there's these big metal sculptures of different like animals and things along the way that are just kind of out there along the highway. It's really weird. I'm looking at the pictures right now. There's a giant grasshopper. There's some giant fish with a boat, giant pheasants, all sorts of stuff. It was pretty interesting. Something that is just kind of random and just out there kind of in the middle of nowhere. But it was a fun find, and I'm glad that I went out of the way a little ways to check that out and got to see more North Dakota as well. So anyways, I did that. That didn't take too long. Kind of stopped for pictures along the way. Saw a beautiful antelope as I was on that highway. I actually almost hit it because it was crossing the road right as I was kind of driving by it. But beautiful antelope. And then, ultimately that night I made it to Bismarck, North Dakota, which is kind of in the middle of the state and is the capital of North Dakota. As I was coming into Bismarck, the sun had set by that time, and the weather was very stormy again. and there was just, it was pretty crazy. It was probably at that time was the craziest storm that I had been in my life. It was just constant thunder and lightning. The lightning was all around. It looked like I was just driving right into it. I remember very clearly as I was kind of getting close to Bismarck. It was a little bit of like a downhill slope, and there was just this massive lightning bolt that came down, and it branched off into three different bolts, and so it looked like a trident, like someone was sticking a trident in the ground, and it was like right in front of me. So it was pretty wild to see. But that was really cool. I really like thunder and lightning. I like those storms, and yeah, the Midwest definitely put on a show that night for me. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, I stayed in Bismarck that night, and let's see. Yeah, I got in late at night, so I didn't do anything that night. Just had dinner and went to bed. And then the next day, I went to the state capitol, went to the North Dakota History Museum, which was really fun. Got a nice sense of the history of the state, and can't remember what else I did. I don't think I did too much there. And then I turned south and headed towards South Dakota. I drove down through a lot of central North and South Dakota. Took some, back highways. There was nothing out there. And eventually I came out, trying to see on the map here. Came out to I-90 just east of the Badlands National Park. Okay, there it is on the map. And so then I drove to the eastern entrance of the Badlands National Park. Got into the park there, so that was National Park number 2 on this trip. And got some souvenirs and everything. And then I drove along. There's a road that kind of runs along the edge of the Badlands there, and so I did that. Drove through the Badlands, which is beautiful. Again, I think a very underrated national park that you don't hear much about, but I thought the Badlands were incredible. It was amazing. And by the way, North and South Dakota, those were new states for me, so that was exciting as well. But yeah, the Badlands were beautiful. I took a lot of pictures there. Really interesting landscape that I had never seen before, to be honest. So that was a lot of fun going through there. And then, let's see, ultimately made it out to the western edge of the Badlands, and you take a road north up to this town called Wall. And for any of you that have been here, you know what this place is like. But I went to Wall Drug Store, which is a humongous tourist trap. I think it's definitely worth the stop, but it is quite the tourist trap. And there's like everything that you can think of there. They got, ice cream. They got restaurants. They got gift shops. They got antiques. They got everything there. Quite the place for sure. So I stopped there and got some souvenirs and I think some ice cream too, and everything. But yeah, that was a fun stop. Definitely recommend people check it out if they're ever driving through the area. So yeah, that was fun. And then I drove west to Rapid City, South Dakota, and Rapid City is where I stayed that night. And went to this really cool brewery that I'm trying to find it here. It was in an old firehouse. It used to be, let's see, I don't remember the name. I don't know if it was Firehouse Brewery or something like that. It was a really cool place, but anyways, yeah, went to this Firehouse brewery in Rapid City and had dinner there and had a couple beers, and it was a really cool place. I really enjoyed it. Good atmosphere and everything. I chatted with the bartender, and they were telling me all about South Dakota and Rapid City and everything. So that was a lot of fun. And then that was it for that day. The next day, got up and drove west some more, and drove up into the Black Hills in western South Dakota, and made my way to Mount Rushmore. And so up in the mountains there. And so I went to Mount Rushmore, which was amazing as well. I can't believe the detail that they were able to carve into the rock there, into the mountains. Quite the place to see, for sure. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, spent some time there, so it was fun. Interesting to hear and read about how they were able to, to carve the president's faces in there. So it was pretty wild, and something that I definitely would not have wanted to work on. The tools that they were using back then, and the safety or the lack of safety was pretty insane. So yeah, not where I would want to work, but it was fun to see. And then from there, I drove not too far away from there is the Crazy Horse Memorial, which they're still carving into the rock there. They've been working on it for a very long time, and when I was there in 2017, they were not even close to being finished. They had a long ways to go, and who knows if that thing will ever be finished. But nonetheless, it was amazing to see what they had carved already, and the progress that they had made. It was really interesting, for sure. And there's a nice little visitor center and everything there, which it kind of explained everything, and explained the Native Americans and the white people coming west in that area and everything. It's pretty interesting. And let's see, from there I drove through the Black Hills there. I went to it's called Needles. Let's see. Yeah, the Needles Eye Tunnel, which is definitely like a needle's eye. Very small, very tiny little pathway in the rocks as you're driving on this road that you can barely fit a car through. Definitely one car can barely fit through that. I took a video of it as I was going through. It was quite the experience. Yeah, felt a little tight. You're driving on a hill there. You can see, down below there's the cliff like right next to you, and you got this little space that you can get through. But it was definitely a beautiful drive for sure as I was heading south. So I would recommend that to you as well. And yeah, so I drove south from there and ultimately made my way to Wind Cave National Park, which was the third national park on this trip. And took a tour of Wind Cave there. You can't see anything from the surface. It's all underneath, all underneath in the caves there. And it was quite interesting to see how much of it they discovered, how big the cave is, all the different little offshoots and everything, how it was formed. Quite the place, and definitely worth checking out if you're in that area. It was interesting. And from there, I kept driving south, and not too far away is Hot Springs, South Dakota, which I wish I would have got to spend a little bit more time at. It was probably 5 o'clock at this point, 5 p.m., as I was heading south, and so things were closing up, and I was trying to get further south for the night. But I stopped at this place called the Mammoth Site, where they found some mammoth ruins, or mammoth fossils, and checked that place out. It's all indoors and covered up. So everything's preserved really well, and they're still digging everything out, but they found a bunch of mammoth bones. And I think that they, if I remember correctly, they figured this was probably the edge of an ancient watering hole, and so a lot of mammoths went there and died as they were trying to get water or whatever. But that was a neat little stop. Didn't take long, but was a nice little stop as I was heading south. And then from there, I kept going south and drove down into Nebraska from there. And it was getting into nighttime at this point. I tried to stop and take a picture. So along the way, I was stopping at all of the borders and taking a picture of the sign of the state for all of the new states that I was traveling into. And I tried to stop to take a picture as I was heading into Nebraska. But as soon as I got out of the car, I was getting eaten alive by mosquitoes. And so I immediately ran back into the car and did not get a picture of the Nebraska sign. But anyways, so yeah, I drove down there, and as I was continuing to drive, it was getting into nighttime, and there was more stormy weather in the area, and so all around me for a solid probably 2 to 3 hours as I was driving, there was an amazing lightning storm, thunder and lightning. I mean, it was just everywhere. It was constant, all over the place, just lightning everywhere. It was an amazing Midwest storm for sure. And I'm glad that I was sort of in it, but not really. I stopped at one point and took a video that was maybe like a minute and a half long, and it was just constant lightning all around. So that was really fun. I really enjoyed it. I don't know. It was a cool experience for me. Some people might not think that, but I enjoyed it. So yeah, they kept driving. As I was driving on one of the, smaller highways, it was 8 or 9 o'clock at night. It was dark out. Maybe it was even later than that, 9 or 10 o'clock. I don't know. But I was like the only car out there, and I was speeding, and ended up getting my first ticket that night in the back highway of Nebraska, which, yeah, that sucked. That was an added expense that I wasn't planning for on the trip, but I guess that's what I get for speeding. But anyways, I stopped in Scottsbluff, Nebraska briefly. Didn't do anything there because it was late at night. And then I drove into Wyoming and drove south down into Colorado. And ultimately that night I made it down to Boulder to where my family lived, and spent the night there. And spent a couple days with the family there in Boulder. We went to a number of different things. We took the Pancho Billy's bus tour of Boulder, which was a lot of fun. It's a funny bus tour, but you get a lot of information. So I thought it was really good. We went to the Celestial Seasonings tea factory. You've probably seen Celestial Seasonings in the stores. It's sold everywhere. That was pretty fun to go to. They had the peppermint room where all the peppermint tea is stored, and that was like a whole separate thing. I thought I really enjoyed it. And we went to the Leanin' Tree Museum, which is known for their cards. You probably have seen those in the stores as well. And then, yeah, I can't remember what else we did. We went to a water park there, which my family that lives in Colorado there, they love that water park, and it was a ton of fun. Definitely enjoyed the day there. Hung out with the family, did all the family stuff. And then my parents actually and sister went back home after a few days, and I stayed one extra day there, and I did some hiking there. Went up, hiked the Flatirons, which is, if you've been to Boulder, you know what it is. It's a beautiful area just outside of Boulder, where lots of people do hiking and rock climbing and that sort of thing. You get a nice, beautiful view of Boulder and the Denver area, and it was just a perfect day while I was there. I love Colorado. It's one of the most beautiful places, especially around the Boulder area. So yeah, definitely recommend checking that out. And yeah, that was all my time there in Boulder. And as I see here, I've been rambling for half an hour now. So what I'm going to do, because there is a lot more to this trip still, this is only the first half of it. I'm going to pause here, and we'll make episode 35 part 2 to this. So we'll finish out the rest of the road trip in part 2. There's still a lot more that I went and saw, a lot more national parks, new states, that sort of thing. So I'll pick it up in episode 35, so stay tuned for that. But thank you guys again for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a ton of fun sharing these stories with you. I hope you enjoy listening to them. I hope it inspires you. I hope you want to see more, because I'm kind of just glossing over these a little bit. I'm not getting into a lot of the details. Obviously, you can't see all the pictures that I'm looking at. So I'll have to share more pictures on the Instagram page and whatnot. But it's fun to share these stories. I love hearing other people's stories. I love having all the guests on. And I just thank you guys for listening. And please go share it. Go subscribe on my YouTube channel. The bigger this audience gets, the bigger all of this gets, the more that I can give back to all of you. I just did my first giveaway not too long ago through the business, and that was a lot of fun being able to give some cash to people, and hopefully they use it well, and or use it for a trip too, and hopefully I can give bigger and better prizes as well in the future. I would love to be able to give away free trips to people to go to Colorado or go to Costa Rica or somewhere, whatever it is they want to do. So anyways, thanks again, guys. Go to ourtravelexp.com to check out everything. It's all on the website there. I'm doing my best to update it pretty consistently, but you can check out, if you're looking to take a trip and you want some advice from me, I'm happy to help you there. If you need a tour guide, let me know. I'm happy to help with that as well. If you want to read the blog, if you want to, listen to the podcast, watch the YouTube shows, all of it's there. So go check that out, guys. And stay tuned for episode 35 and all the ones in between. And keep traveling. And I'll see you all around the world soon. Hey everybody, Kyle here. If you enjoyed today's show and want more, you can always check out every episode on Spotify and Anchor. And now you can also listen on YouTube. Links are in the description below. If you want to see my travel pictures as well as travel pictures from guests on the show, you can check them out on Instagram. The page is called Our Travel Experiences Podcast. And if you want to share your own pictures on the Instagram page and or be a guest on the podcast, you can message me via that Instagram page or email me at ourtravelexperiences@outlook.com. I would love to see your pictures and hear about your travel experiences. And if that isn't enough for you, make sure to check out my new show, From Around the World Fridays. Every Friday, I'm taking 5 to 10 minutes to discuss one specific travel topic, whether that be questions I get from listeners, sharing some souvenirs that I've bought over the years, or discussing one particular city or country that I've been to, and so much more. You'll be able to listen to that via Spotify and Anchor as well, and be able to see the video version, which I'm really excited about, on YouTube. So check it out. I promise you won't be disappointed. And thanks again for listening, and I will see you around the world soon.